Hey, security peeps, we are live with another edition of Breaking Into Cybersecurity, and it is CISO Thursdays. Woo, 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 woo. I am Renee Small, cybersecurity super recruiter, helping awesome leaders hire great talent. My phenomenal co-host, Chris Foulon.
Howdy, everyone. Happy Thursday. Baby Yoda says hi.
Quite the intro, Chris.
Right.
Please.
Oh my gosh. Mr. James Azar, big CISO, and we have baby CISO.
Yes, we do. We absolutely do. He's 3 weeks old now. So
Oh my gosh.
it's very exciting. It's finally starting to get into some sort of routine.
Yes.
I think mom had the hardest job. I simply get to change diapers and feed baby when I need to.
That is awesome. Mom has the toughest job. Hope she's doing well and getting better.
I'm starting to see the greener horizons and pastures. We've had adventures the last 3 weeks.
It's always an adventure at the beginning. And then we have Rock, who is coming back. He's had some technical difficulties, but Rock Lambros, when he comes back, he'll introduce himself. Zoe is here. Hey, Zoe. Keep keeping us informed about that job. Clinton says, happy Thursday. Good to see you guys, and congratulations.
Thank you, Clinton. Thank you.
All right. Rock, can you hear us?
Yep.
We can hear you. Woohoo! So we have Rock Lambros as our guest today. Please introduce yourself, Rock.
Hey, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be watching and listening. My name is Rock Lambros. I'm the CEO and founder of Rock Cyber, a small cybersecurity consulting company based out of Denver, Colorado, focusing on critical infrastructure industries.
Sweet. Totally need security and critical infrastructure. So our topic for today, or our kickoff topic for today, will be getting into DevSecOps, right?
Yes.
How do we break into that industry for folks, especially if you're, and I think it's a really great space, especially for developers that are moving into security, for people who want to pivot. So it could be a really, really good entry point, a break-in point, so to speak. So folks, take it away. James, you want to start, or Chris?
I can start. I know one of the things that I've been talking to hiring managers a lot lately, and one of the things that you're looking for, especially when it comes to the DevSecOps space, you're looking for engineers who can build and automate things and then add security to how they approach things. They've found that it's a lot easier to bring in someone who's interested in security but has that DevOps, that engineering experience, and add security to them versus the other way around, someone who's experienced in security but now has to figure out how to do engineering and how to do coding and how to do infrastructure. Rock, I see you nodding your head. What do you want to say on this?
No, I think fundamentally everything is code, right? Everything is turning into code. And, I wish, as you could tell, I'm kind of old and gray and have some wisdom long in the tooth. But going back to my career, like today, I wish I had focused more on that coding space, right? I can't tell you the last time I wrote a line of code. And I think people trying to break into the industry moving forward today, and especially all these cybersecurity boot camps or cybersecurity programs in traditional colleges and universities, they need to be teaching more of the app dev side, of the engineering dev side, to be able to, produce these individuals who are really qualified to fit in a more quote unquote buzz term alert agile DevOps world. We still largely focus on governance and kind of like network segmentation and the traditional CIS top 20 type of controls, which is great because those are all foundational. But we seem to be missing that. There seems to be a huge gap and whether that be application security or that rolling into DevOps or whatnot. So,
James, what have you been seeing?
So let's start off by saying that there's a bunch of different roles within security, and we've talked about them here on the show over the last, I think, year or so. And all of these roles entail different things. And Rock kind of brought up all the different boot camps, and we've kind of done that, spoke about it. I don't want to recycle it. What I do want to get into today, though, is the fact that everything that we do today is software based. And if you don't start to address the fact that everything is software based, and that companies who produce software, because simply we live in a supply chain world where everything is as a service now, right? So platform, infrastructure, and software is all as a service. And obviously now we've got IoT as a service, and we can keep going down that list of things that come in as a service. Well, that's all software. And there's going to be a point in time where organizations that buy that software, that use that platform, that are supported by a specific infrastructure, are going to want to audit the software supply chain side, especially after SolarWinds. When you think of SolarWinds, we're 11 months past SolarWinds, but we're not really over it. A lot of people have kind of let it slip to the sides, but we can't really ignore the fact that that was a sophisticated software supply chain. If you look at every single vulnerability we've talked about that's been significant, I'm not talking about the stuff that vendors used to sell you a burning bridge somewhere, or send you an email so that you open it and take a meeting. I'm talking about the stuff that is really significant. It all lies within the CI/CD pipeline, within how do we maintain our SLDCs. And if you're going to break into security and you really want to build a long-term career and really develop it, well, the next line of CISOs are all going to be software CISOs, right? The evolution of the CISO reporting to the CIO is all but starting to go away. So you're going to start either a CISO is going to be kind of like an Alan Alford, where you're a CTO/CISO, right? And Alan wears both hats magnificently. And he's really kind of defining that role, but that's going to be the future of it. So when I'm talking to people who want to break into security now, it's go take a coding boot camp, learn Python, learn C++, learn something, because you're going to have to learn how to code, number one. And number two, if you think of like the Microsoft ecosystem today is derived by PowerShell. Yeah. And you're going to have to learn how to write PowerShell script if you want to even be a security engineer or even a basic architect within the Microsoft ecosystem.
I have a question for you all. Do you think that coding should be, I thought coding was like a fundamental just component of these security programs. So when James, you made me laugh just now when you said go learn something, because I remember
anything but liberal arts, okay? Anything but liberal arts.
Amen.
9 minutes in, woohoo! We're breaking our own record. When I was in undergrad, 20 years ago, good Lord, I had to take C. Like, it was an information technology business program. It was in a business school, so it was information technology, but you had coding. I mean, coding was a component, like it was your basic foundational course. And I'm curious to find out if that's what's happening in these boot camps, in these, cybersecurity programs, master's programs, things like that. If they're not in there as kind of like your baseline understanding in the coding space.
So look at like Western governors, right? So they've got probably one of the more popular BAs in security. Mm-hmm. They don't really teach you coding. They kind of cover it, hover over it, touch on it. And a lot of other universities touch on it unless you go take the class. I kind of want to flip the script though. This isn't about the boot camp or anything like that. This is about how you develop the next line of workforce. Right. Because the demand in 5 years is going to be, you don't have DevOps anymore. DevOps is going to be a dead term. It's going to be DevSecOps. Every position is going to be DevSecOps. And so if you want to be a DevOps person, you want to write code, you want to be in development, you want to be a developer, you want to be a software engineer, you want to be a software architect, you're going to have to learn how to write code. And you're going to have to learn, one, you're going to have to learn code to do that job. But number two, you're going to have the basics of how do you build security. And by the way, where you're seeing that the most now is GitHub versus GitLab and Bitbucket. If you take all three and you start to compare it, so GitHub got bought by Microsoft. Those who don't know. So that means that it's kind of like Skype. Anyone remember Skype? Yeah.
All too well.
All too well. But GitHub has become kind of like Skype. It's there. It's popular. Everyone uses it because it was grandfathered in. And now you've got GitLab and Bitbucket who've kind of come up, and those founders and those companies have kind of come up with the whole concept of how do we build a CI/CD pipeline within our own architecture and infrastructure, and then how do we secure it so that you don't need to go and integrate 700 different things. And Microsoft right now is getting shellacked by both of those in GitHub. And I say Microsoft because Microsoft owns GitHub. GitHub is a separate business unit. But at the end of the day, Microsoft bought GitHub because it understood the power of GitHub to its ecosystem. But they're not investing. They're not really picking up. They've been so vested on Azure and Azure Active Directory and Office 365 E5 that they've completely zoned out GitHub, which is at the basis of everything we do in technology today, which is software. And that's where people go. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I would argue it really depends on where in cybersecurity you want to go, because there's always going to have those non-technical roles, those individuals that have liberal arts and know how to talk to people. Because in the end, if you can't talk to the business and you can't find out what drives them and how to communicate that message to your board, to the rest of your peers, you're gonna find yourself never talking at the big boys table or big girls table. You'll always find yourself being filtered by another leader. So those individuals are always going to be needed. So when you say everyone needs how to code, yes, you can learn how to code and it could help you in your role, but it's if you want to be on the technical side of cybersecurity, coding is going to be helpful. Coding will be the basis of your foundation.
So if we're talking in the context of building kind of the future generation, even GRC is going to become code, right? Even a lot of GRC tasks are going to end up being automated. So I am very passionate about being able to speak to the big boys table, like very passionate about it. My COVID project was writing a book about it, but that's also, that role isn't for everyone. So like you said, Chris, it depends on like which path you want to take. But I would argue that even fundamentally, as we move to more and more infrastructure as code, platform as code, and automation, right? Because that's ultimately at heart what DevOps is, and being able to automate these processes. GRC is going to have to be automated along the way as well. So while you don't have to be, like NASA level computer engineer, coder, right? You still need a strong fundamental background to be able to just go in and hack a script, hack a JSON file, right? In AWS to be able to implement some automation features, even with regards to GRC or IAM or some of those more governance, non-technical roles that you're talking about.
You also have to look at it from another perspective, Chris, which is what Rock just kind of brought up, the automation piece. But if you go beyond automation, the human capacity roles, we tend to automate. And I'll challenge you by the following. When was the last time you walked into like a McDonald's, Burger King, Chick-fil-A?
Never walked into
it.
Drive through.
It's all computerized though.
So I'll give you an example. So this summer, when I was in Israel, I took my niece to the mall and we went to the food court and she wanted McDonald's, right? Like every 3-4-year-old, they're corrupted with McDonald's. And so McDonald's has completely eliminated the need for cashiers, right? It's completely automated. You walk into a touchscreen machine, you customize everything you want, and that's it. It's done. It's over. You don't. The next time you speak to a person is when someone says order 29, because that's the number on your receipt, and they say, what kind of sauce do you want with your nuggets, right? Well, governance and a lot of these roles that today have human capital and human capitalization to them are going to end up getting automated, because as we move to more as a service, when we look 5 years down the road, 10 years, I'm not talking about now, right? I'm not talking about today. Today, though, people are going to hire you today because we need people. But you're going to eventually go kind of very similar to red teaming, right? Red teaming used to be like the biggest shortage, right? We couldn't have enough red teamers. All these red teaming boot camps. Everyone went in, everyone paid, right? Everyone got their Security Plus or their certified ethical hacker. And now red teaming's pretty much been, network pen testing is now pretty much automated.
Yep.
You have no need to have a human do a network pen test today because machines do it more often for cheaper and are just as effective.
Right. I want to.
They're still learning the business context challenges, right? There's always going to be, how does business context work, and finding those business context loopholes. I will say in 5-10 years, as AI, quote unquote, machine learning tends to evolve, they could learn how to figure out those narratives and how to figure out those loopholes. But valid point.
Well, and we're never going to automate the human out of InfoSec, cybersecurity, whatever term you want to use today. We're never going to automate the human out of it. We're just talking about, what does the next generation of cybersecurity professionals need to look like, right? Like, what are some of those fundamental skill sets that they should be striving for to be valuable in the marketplace, to raise their value in the marketplace? You get somebody who's got soft skills and can code, like, I don't care if they can spell cyber, I can teach them that stuff, right? So, I think we're talking about like two things can be true at once, right? We're never going to automate the human out of cybersecurity ever. The business context is hugely important. Even like from, hey, are we in a high growth phase organization or environment, or are we hoarding cash right now because, well, we're in a global pandemic and the market has crashed, right? Even understanding that business context helps you bring value to the table. And, we're never going to kind of automate that piece of it.
So a couple of good comments coming up here. First and foremost, and before I jump into comments, I just wanted to say that I think that I'm with James on the just coding as a fundamental. I think coding should just be a fundamental skill. Like how I was telling one of my friends, we both have kids that are the same age, and I just talked about it as like reading and writing and math, because everything is developed now. There's nothing that we touch that doesn't have code behind it. Like James talked about going into McDonald's. I talked to my son about the cars having, you're driving a computer. It's just so fundamental at this point. And it should be a fundamental skill, regardless of you go into a hospital. My mom is a retired nurse, and she says, going into a hospital today, she wouldn't be able to function because everything there's so much automation, there's so much, everything you're touching has a computer component, technical component to it. So like, why wouldn't we all be getting that fundamental skill as a whole? And to be honest, I think it should be starting way younger than getting to.
Well, it should start in school, right?
It should start elementary school, kindergarten, first grade, second grade.
And we're seeing that. I mean, my niece has definitely been, she's 13 now, but she's been exposed to that stuff for at least 3-4 years. Even through just like little Raspberry Pi kits and whatever. But and now, fortunately, she's like in a STEM program at a school, so she actually took a liking to it. So we're starting to see that.
Yeah.
But it's gonna take a while.
That's the future. If you look at, I was on a webinar recently, and it was the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And you're talking about the future roles, like in 10 years, what roles are in growth and which ones are going down. It's, if you don't have a baseline understanding or fundamental understanding in this space, it's just going to be a struggle as we continue on. So comments here. Danielle is back. Hey, Danielle, we haven't seen her in forever. I hope you are well. Danielle says machine code language. She said there's a role for everyone. It won't necessarily be the same role. This is when we were all talking about GRC and different positions, different roles. And then Danielle, I think, made another comment. You cannot automate the physical security element of cybersecurity.
But they are. The cloud is doing just that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the cloud is getting rid of the whole element of, now it's operational security. So we need to get rid of like physical security and start to talk about operational security or OPSEC. So what devices are people using? How are they using them? How are they sourced? I mean, the biggest thing for me now
on the internet.
Right. I mean, Yahoo bailed out of China this week.
Yeah.
That's like getting like no coverage whatsoever. But I'm like, this is significant. Like Yahoo is leaving China.
Yep. Yeah, which is huge, right? Because for the last decade and a half, we've been learning, even like through MBA programs, China's an emerging market. There's 1 billion people in China. It's an untapped market. That's why globalization. That's why businesses are going there. And now, without getting into a geopolitical debate, you're starting to see, I think Yahoo's the biggest feather of organizations that have pulled out, but you are starting to see organizations pull out of China and kind of reevaluate those strategies.
Well, even Microsoft is rethinking their China strategy. Yep. A lot of U.S. organizations are rethinking their China strategy.
And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is China's demanding to see inside their intellectual property, and companies don't want that to be copied and replicated by white label versions of this. So companies are starting to realize that if they want in that market, they have to potentially give up their IP in order to get there. And is that really worth it for that market share?
Right.
It used to be that we always went for quantity, right? 1.3 billion people in China. That's a huge market. Yeah, but if 90% of them are slaves being paid $10 a month,
right?
What the hell exactly kind of market are you going into? That's like saying North Korea, man, untapped.
Right, exactly.
Right. So Joseph Drayton says, "Happy Thursday, everyone," and he says, "Is there a Q&A portion of this show?" The whole show is Q&A, my friend. So ask your question
right now.
Ask your question. We are happy to jump in and answer it. Paul Cummings. Oh no, I'm late. You're not late. You are here. So Paul,
you can never be late to live.
Right.
So Renee, like back to your point, while your point is up, back to your point of we're driving computers right in the cars. I think it was either Ford or GM that came out and said a few years ago, we're not a car company, we're a software company.
Yeah.
That was Ford.
Yeah, no, Ford. Software company first, and then we happen to have 4 wheels that kind of move it forward.
Yeah.
Well, if you ask Tesla will tell you they're not a car company. They're an energy company, right? Like, I mean, they're full-fledged. They're fully kind of committed to the idea of we're an energy company. We're not, a car is just one of the products we use to, kind of produce or, reduce energy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at the supply, 1 second, sorry, Renee. If you look at the supply shortage for everything from cars, home appliances, personal devices, they're all computerized, and there's not enough chips to go around. So that's why there's a shortage and a marked increase on everything, because everything's running on a chip these days.
Yeah.
You're sure it's not because there's like 100 chips outside of California that can't unload?
That too.
That too.
But I mean, what? Intel invested $50 billion in Arizona to build 5 more chip plants to try to address the market and catch up where they are.
Because now that's so again, here we go. This is kind of like the whole point of coding, right? Is I was speaking to a friend of mine last night who works for NVIDIA, and he does a lot of their gaming stuff, right? He creates video games, and it's the coolest job on the planet, right? Like you see this guy's like CV, he's like total like bad mamma jamma, like you want to go to his house and just game all day long, right? Because he's got like the best graphics cards, he's got the best processors. I mean, he's just got the best of everything. But when you think of like the shortage of video cards isn't because they can't make them. It's because they can make them. It's just the demand isn't there, right? So NVIDIA drops a card today that no one's really going to use for 2 to 3 years because the games and the game manufacturers haven't yet adapted to the new technology that comes with these new cards, so that can allow you to really play a game at a really high level. Because how disappointing is it to watch like a Madden preview, then get it on PlayStation, and you're like, the graphics aren't even the same, right? Because of the way because of that. But now we're at a point where the preview can match the game, but the manufacturers haven't yet picked up on it and don't have the skill set. And they don't have the skill set because they don't have the people who have the skill set to do it. And they don't have that because there's less people really that are looking at coding. A lot of that is being outsourced, and that's a huge job market. It always has been in our country. We've just haven't really invested in it.
And I think it's telling, that they're starting to actually actively market more towards the crypto miners, people who want to use the GPUs to mine crypto versus do what they were originally designed for, which is process graphics, which is a much more kind of complex task, right? Versus crypto, where it's just kind of churning away and you're just eating processor cycles.
So
Scott wants to know, should he drop his Mandarin as a second language class?
No.
And yeah, don't drop it. And frankly, being bilingual or multilingual helps you kind of in the in cybersecurity in general, but also with coding, right? Because C+ and Java, they're cousins, but they're still different languages. They're like Mandarin and Cantonese, right? So being able to, or whatever, Ruby or whatever, right? Those are all essentially different languages. They're just literally computer languages versus human languages that you pick up. So if you have that skill set and that capability to be multilingual, that'll help you there as well.
Good analogy.
I think there's the mental framework of picking up linguistic patterns that is hugely translatable to picking up coding patterns and being able to learn that quickly. So if you have the ability to be bilingual, you could code in many languages fairly easy.
Sterling says, awesome shirt, Chris. I think coding is a good skill to have in the toolbox, even if you're like me and a communications professional pivoting into cyber. It helps to have even a basic familiarity of 1 or 2 languages, in parens, Python and JS, etc.
The other thing, going back to that Mandarin comment, is people don't understand that in code you've got comments, and if you're trying to analyze code, especially if you're doing like forensics and security, and you're trying to like analyze malware, a lot of times some of that comments on the stuff you're analyzing is written in Farsi, it could be written in Russian, could be written in Chinese and Mandarin, Korean, Ukrainian, Latvian, Romanian, Bulgarian, and there's a ton of languages out there. So you want to be, just because you're becoming a developer doesn't mean you should give up a second language. Hell, pick up 2 or 3 while you're at it.
Yeah.
And study those.
And the same goes for threat intel, right? Not just looking at comments in code, but to be able to look at comments in malicious code as you're dissecting it for threat intel reasons. That's definitely helpful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The bad guys don't always write in English. They're like, "Ooh, make this very easy. Say it again."
Paul says, I forecast a lot of companies jumping on quantum, nano, and XDR to reduce human power, to find out a year later they still need analysts. This is more from the SIM side. And he also says, learning those fundamentals would also help empower you to join critical infrastructure cyber, an area in deep need, which is in reference to coding skills in school.
Yep. Because you're on the critical infrastructure side, right? You start looking into programmable logic controllers, PLCs, and how SCADA and distributed computing systems operate. It's different than your traditional IT. Those protocols are different. Those protocols don't have security by and large built into them natively, right? So picking up those coding skills will absolutely help, right? Because they're all written in some sort of logic coding framework.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: start with C++. It's the hardest one, but from there, everything gets easier.
Yeah,
Machine
I agree. If you're
Like, don't go to Python.
I agree. If you're sitting there thinking to yourselves right now, which language should I go pick up first? Right now, C++ is
Painful.
essentially has become the Rosetta Stone, right? Everything has since C++ has kind of been derived in one way or another off of C++, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be Java or Python, it's got a lot of similarities. C#, right? So that would be a great foundation, and like James said, then you can kind of go from there.
C++ is still the fastest way to process information from a software perspective. Python's really, really slow. People talk about Python often like it's like the next great thing here, but Python's good, but it's still very, very slow. It's kind of like the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Well, yeah, it's compiled code versus non-compiled code, right? And Python is really more scripting language than it is a full-featured compiled. It's not compiled code, right? So of course it's going to be slower.
Paul sent that in. He said, here's a helpful start for folks listening intrigued by learning coding. So it's a tutorials.cyberaces.org/tutorials about coding. So cool. Thanks for that resource, Paul. Hi, it's me, Raj, here from India. Hey, Raj from India.
Hey, Raj.
Danielle says, once you learn one coding language, the next one becomes easier. The problem is keeping the syntax straight after learning multiple coding languages.
Yep.
Do I need to put a semicolon here or not?
So Rosa says, looking at breaking into the forensic side, any suggestions? Is there a large market outside of police force?
Yeah, everyone in industry. Mandy, every single cybersecurity company from I don't want to name drop names here because I don't want people to take them as endorsements. So I'm not going to name drop them, but I'll just say, look at every single major cybersecurity company, Rosa. They all have forensics team. They all deploy and do incident response, and they all need it. The police force is actually going to be the most underpaid and underappreciated job you'll ever do.
Yep.
You're better off going to the private sector.
Every major company usually has their own IR division as well, in addition to the consulting companies that they will bring in for potentially the more complex engagements. But they try not to do that because the big companies like that, big boys, big girls, charge a lot of money to come in for those engagements.
Yeah, I was going to double down on that, Rosa. Any large company, so literally any large company usually has a forensics person or team inside.
And we mean large, like cybersecurity service companies, right? Like not necessarily.
No, financial services,
well,
like
big
JPMorgan Chase or
yeah.
Cap One or Freddie Mac or any of those large ones usually have a group like that in there. Okay, Joseph Drayton has his question in regards to a pathway to pen testing. As someone who's going for Net Plus and Security Plus, what advice would you give to someone looking to get into the pen testing world? I know about Try Hack Me and Hack the Box, but how can I present that knowledge to an employer?
So talk about how you used those challenges to hone your skills and what business problems they solve. Create incident response reports based on those challenges, show your analytical skills. And then the other thing is you have to be able to understand the attacker's mindset and how you can use that within any pen testing engagement. So you're using the Try Hack Me as a potential adversary, and you have to explain that to potential hiring managers that's the mindset. This is why you went this way. This is how you manipulated the code and got the response that you were looking for.
Yeah, create a almost like a portfolio for yourself, right? These are kind of the scenarios I set up. This is how I attacked them or I approached the challenge. And hiring managers out there looking for people. I mean, this is going to be a rant, but don't tell me that we have a cyber skill shortage when all you're doing is looking for people with specific prior experience or certifications. Like they have to have a CEA
CP.
or Pen Test Plus or whatever, right? Or a
or
CIO
OSCP.
or an OSCP. Like, does the person have the passion and the capacity to learn the technical stuff? You can teach, right? Like, so don't, we could have another live conversation about the supposed skill gap that we have self-created.
Right.
I think
we
we've
talk about that every week.
I will say, Joseph, go back and listen to episodes from a year ago. We talked about this extensively. We've got a full library in Breaking Into Cybersecurity's CISO Thursdays where we kind of addressed all that. So all great advice, but if you want more, just go back and listen to a bunch of some of these old episodes. It's relevant today than it was then.
The early ones, like between January, like right around January-ish time, we had a lot of discussion around this. So Danielle says, "Ha, C++ was easy after trying to keep track of bits in machine code language." Matthew says, "Can C++ be used for web development on backend to speed it up?"
No idea.
I don't code in there.
know,
depending on the website.
Go ahead, James.
Depending on the website. So it just depends on the website. Most websites today, you have no need to use C++, simply because most people use like Wix or WordPress, and there's very little coding requirement there. It's all just pretty much plug and play. Unless you're really building a customized website, then you use C++. But for the most part, you don't really need to.
Yeah, and even then,
I guess if you're hosting your own infrastructure,
or to play or just try something out. I'm thinking about it from the perspective of learning the skill. So that might be where he is in terms of the question.
I'd say go to Stack Overflow and ask some of the developers there that are looking for stuff to copy and paste.
Yeah, good point. So Paul is telling Rosa, SecureWorks has an awesome forensics team, and he knows some people over there. So Rosa, make sure you connect with Paul. This person says, "Okay, can we just get together an Animal House of coders and hackers already? Please and thank you."
I love the Ron Swanson at the end. I'll take the Ron Swanson any day. But we've talked about Cyber City USA. We still haven't decided on
it. Let's do it. We should put it in there. It should be in the metaverse.
Oh God.
Oh yeah. You know what? Negative. No, it should not. All right.
No. Paul says a lot of pen test firms are looking for GitHubs, not saying write your own tools, but having a Git of your toolbox.
Not a bad idea. That's kind of the portfolio.
Yeah.
GitHub has kind of become like the free repository for pen testers to host shit for free.
Yeah.
The other thing that I used to do back in the day when I was learning how to use all the scripts from Microsoft is I would just have a notepad of all the scripts, what they do, so that I can always go back to the frequently used ones and be able to modify it as needed.
Excellent. Joseph says, thanks in regards to our advice. So I wanted to add in earlier, I know we're past this point, but we had a CIO on here when we were talking about the cars and the car industries. We had a CIO on one of the Breaking Into Cyber leadership editions. He was CIO of the Ohio State Turnpike. And he talked about purely, that anyone coming up nowadays, if they wanted to break in, that should be the space. And he talked about, what autonomous vehicles, how we're moving, and that autonomous vehicles will be in the next 20 years or so, completely, being on the road. So think about how much code is involved in that, like how to secure that. Like, he went, and that's another great episode to watch. It is the CIO of Ohio State Turnpike, and I'm trying to remember his name, but it's a CISO. It was a leadership series episode. And he just talked about that in general. And it just goes back to the fundamental of what we were talking about earlier in terms of code. So Paul says, this person says, Paul, this is exactly what I was discussing about an hour ago. Good feedback. And Joseph says he's kind of intimidated by breaking into the cyberspace.
Don't be.
Yeah,
Don't be intimidated.
people aren't that scary. They pretty much all look like Chris. They wear Yoda shirts.
Exactly.
The whole black background.
Yeah.
Shades.
It's all psychologically fearful, but really they're all just teddy bears under it all.
Bill.
That's why all Russians are called bears.
There you go.
Bears, and
There you go.
Chinese ones are pandas, and Iranians are kittens and kitties.
Do we look intimidating to you? We're all
Any of this intimidating.
I mean, talk about the diversity just in this group right here.
Exactly. Paul says, don't be Joseph. Joseph, connect with Paul. Make sure you connect with people. That's another thing we talked about. We talk about this all the time in networking. And there's so many people that have made connections just from being on this, not guests, but making comments in the comment section and connecting with people either on LinkedIn or on YouTube. And then from there, taking that kind of offline or online further and just making more and more connections. And this is people have landed jobs this way. People have landed volunteer opportunities, have been able to really expand their network. So connect with folks in the chats. It's a really great way to start to build your network, and you'll realize how unintimidating we are. We only want to help.
Hey, volunteer opportunities are another great way to build that portfolio,
Huge.
right? Volunteer to do a pen test against for a nonprofit, right? That accepts credit cards for donations, right? So something like that, right? That's another great way to build your portfolio as well.
Cool. Just found
Absolutely.
that Turnpike episode.
Little Google foo.
Little Google foo.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
Brooklyn
let's talk about
29
that.
says, two quick
Go ahead,
comments. Brooklyn 29 says, I enjoyed being here. I learned so much. We thank you for coming so often. And Joseph says, a lot of information to take in. It's a little bit difficult. Getting past the initial wall is what I mean. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question for Rock.
That's actually on us as leaders, right? Like going back to the supposed cybersecurity skill shortage, right? That we self-impose on ourselves. I mean, you, Joseph, trying to break into the industry, kind of see these ridiculous job descriptions out there that are like entry level SOC analyst 1 position with 10 years of experience in a CISSP, right? We as leaders have a huge disconnect in our expectations and looking for check boxes on a resume versus actual skills and capabilities.
Yeah.
Rock, I've been saving this question for the whole time. What do you do to develop and groom the young folks that you hire within your organization or that you mentor to get them from zero to hero?
Yeah. So from a mentoring perspective, a lot of it is just kind of advice and guidance, what we're doing now, right? But trying to establish, trying to understand, first of all, what their goals are and what their interests are, right? Are they more interested in the GRC and policy side? Are they more interested in the pen test, infrastructure, forensic side? And then, kind of helping define a roadmap for them. And people who work for me kind of the same, except then I have the capability to allocate 10%, 15% of their time, even 20% of their time, depending on what's going on, to, hey, go off and research something, learn something, right? And then try and allocate, historically, I've tried to allocate like 10% of their salary towards training every year. From a training budget perspective, and then be committed to actually sending them to training. There's no good time for training. Everybody's always busy. But you have to kind of force that and shoehorn that in. So, and as a leader, that's upon us to create that space to where the employee can do so without kind of feeling guilty or having the stress of what's going on back at the office impacting that training. So
That's great. one of the things that leaders, or not even only leaders, people across the board for as long as I've been doing tech recruiting and cyber recruiting have always talked about, the one of the top reasons why folks leave is due to the lack of training budgets and things like that. So Rock, you're an awesome leader, realizing that, honing that, and ensuring that your team members are getting those skills and being able to continuously grow in the space, because that's one of the number one reasons why people leave. So retention is probably really good in your your organization, whereas other places they turn over and they're asking why, and it's like you could put 10,000 per person onto in a budget. And send them to a couple conferences or to a year or whatever the case is, and you wouldn't have so much turnover as one of the top issues. So.
Yeah, and another thing I stress, though, is that it goes both ways. You have to take ownership of your professional development, right? So you can't do it all, quote unquote, on the company's dime, right? So if you are really passionate at, digital forensics, well, build a forensics lab in your home. Right? Or if you're really passionate to do pen testing, well, build a lab in your home, or try Hack Me or whatever, right? So you can't just rely on the organization to provide you with the space and the time to do it, all your training kind of on the job. You have to take ownership of it.
Yep. Very valid point. Mm-hmm. So Joseph says here, I've been looking to volunteer for a while, and Paul is connecting him with, Paul says he is building volunteers to teach cyber awareness training for free to organizations in need. So Joseph, make sure you connect with Paul. Sterling says, yes, the dialogue with people and not paper, both on this live and then asking questions after, has opened my eyes of how encouraging folks are with those adapting their current experience into something we're all passionate about, which is cybersecurity. Thank you, Sterling. So Chris found our episode. It was the Breaking Into Cybersecurity 2.0 leadership series, and the person's name is Brian Kelly. He is the CIO. It was an awesome episode. He talked about the future of, what he sees in the future of cars. He had given me homework. He's also a professor. So he gave me homework to do research on the Great Manure Crisis. I believe it was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And how, we went from, there was kind of like a flip of a switch going from horses to cars at the turn of the century then, and how he foresees this flip of going to autonomous vehicles. So it's very, very, very interesting episode. Check that one out. Joseph says, and this is a response to probably, I think, Rock's comment about those crazy job descriptions. And Joseph says, I do. They want bachelors with several certs and experience. But I've been hearing about a lot of others who don't know practical knowledge at all. Like, yeah, some of these people that have the certs and the bachelors and all that stuff, and it's just like,
right.
Yeah. And I mean, yesterday I was having a conversation with Evan Francil, and he was talking about what his school is doing down in Texas and how they're using some of the laws from Texas that makes them a workforce school, and how they have to teach the practical skills as part of their core engagement. And I thought that was amazing. And I don't know why more schools don't take that into consideration.
That's great. That's really good. Danielle says, Renee, I'm doing well, working in compliance now. Woohoo! Creating a training for Massachusetts 201 CMR 17. I don't know what that is, but it sounds awesome.
Sounds like a class number.
Yeah, it sounds like a class. It sounds awesome, Danielle. Robert Bush says, can I ask a question? Deaf or hard of hearing users, can they be in cybersecurity? Would there be issue in the workplace as a pen tester or something? Just curious. Sorry if it's out of subject. It is never out of subject here when we're talking about cyber. So Robert, I'm glad you asked your question.
There's so many accommodations.
Yeah,
there's a ton of accommodations for that.
Yeah, there's tons of accommodations. Danielle said it too. Robert, there's accommodations for that, for sure.
And so, I've also talked to leaders that look for those disabilities because individuals have harnessed other aspects of their skills to overcome those quote unquote disabilities and turn that into a superpower.
Yeah, we're starting to see more conversations around neurodiversity as part of the overall diversity and inclusion initiatives, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
We're starting to see a lot more conversations around neurodiversity.
Yeah. Because people learn you overcompensate in one area. So you become, as Chris talks about, you have the superpower in a space that someone that has hearing may not really focus in on. So definitely jump in, or for whoever you're asking about, it would be great. And then Joseph is going back at Paul Cummings. I would love to speak with you more about these various CASP and CDRM, CDPSE, because he's dedicated to learning and putting the extra work to make it in the industry, which is fantastic. That's what we all look for. So Paul says, Chris, just like PTSD is a superpower in a sock.
I think I still have it.
Oh my gosh. So Robert Bush says, thanks. You're welcome, Robert. We're here to help. We're coming up on the top of the hour. We have a couple minutes left. Any final comments before we hit 2 p.m. Eastern?
If we don't have any other comments, I'd love to ask Rock, like, what's your final, if you had to summarize everything that you've done to help grow the talent outside of your organization, like, how would you summarize what individuals can do to help improve the talent pipeline within their organizations to help companies hire better and grow talent better?
Okay. That might be another episode, but real quick, get off of our high horse that, we need very specialized, special snowflakes in our industry, right? And, as you can by these ridiculous job descriptions and requirements. But oftentimes it's not up to us. HR is coming up with these requirements because, for a cybersecurity engineer to fit into a certain job pay category, the HR has formulated these metrics that they must have a college degree and must have a certain number of years of experience, and we know that the cybersecurity job market and industry right now doesn't trend with like any of that, right? So you're gonna have to play nice with your HR professionals to work with them to change a lot of those corporate requirements. If you're not, and if you're in an organization that is not that structured or that, I guess, quote unquote, mature from an HR and hiring perspective, get off your high horse. There are tons of qualified individuals out there that don't check all of the skill set boxes, but have the passion and the capability and the hard skills. Like, you could teach them a Palo Alto firewall, or you could teach them Splunk, right? Like, look for the passion, look for the capability. The rest of that will fall in line.
Perfect. And I'm sorry, I have to be the final person since you talked about HR. If you are a leader, and I know James has to rock, if you are a leader and you cannot overcome that barrier of your HR partner, then you're not really a leader. Like, you should be able to, unless you are in a very regulated industry. So for example, public accounting, where you have to have a CPA, you have to have, you're going to the government saying, bye, James, you're going to the government saying, like, we have everyone on our staff has this cert, or everyone on our staff has X. If that's not your space, then you should be able, as a leader, one should be able as a leader to talk to their HR department and explain why you don't need a person with a degree for a specific position. And I've seen it.
DOD 8570 is one of the worst things to ever happen to our.
Yeah. So, when it's a certificate, like when it's something where you have no wiggle room, I understand. But in the other organizations where you do, you can work around that. So folks, thank you so much. Rock, you were amazing. Rock, what I'm gonna put your LinkedIn in the chat. So
it's just Rock Lambros.
Rock, you're exactly right here. Rock Lambros, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. People are probably gonna reach out to you because you sound like an amazing leader, and try to get opportunities and all that other good stuff, and just connect and network. So thank you so much for being here. This is very, very informative and interesting. And we will see everybody here again next week.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Bye, everybody.